already a subscriber, I would love for you to join. Okay. So, as you can tell from the title, today I'm going to be doing my January and February wrap-up. I meant to do a video for January and then time got away from me, but I'm just gonna go ahead and get started because I've got quite a bit of info. So, I've got my reading journal right here that I'm going to consult to remember all the way back to January. A lot of these books were library books, so I don't have them with me anymore. I will put up a photo of the cover for the books that I don't currently have in my possession. But, so let me go through my reading journal and let's look at January. So, a little bit different than previous wrap-ups is because of my reading journal and things I've started to take a little bit more care to gather some stats that I've got written down for each month. So I'm going to start with January's stats before I get into the books. So in January, I read 8 books, a total of 2,924 pages. My average rating for the month was a 2.71, which is icky. It was not a great reading month. And for genres, I read 4 thriller or horror. I put them together because those lines kind of blur for me in my reading. 1 fan fiction, 1 general fiction, 1 historical fiction, and 1 fantasy. So the first book I read in 2022, I do own, so I've got it with me. And it is The Family Upstairs by the Queen Lisa Jewell. Now, this was actually my first Lisa Jewell, and I've since put more on my TBR, but I've actually got one over there on the shelf that I'm borrowing from my dad. But I rated this 5 stars, so the year started out strong. I rated this 5 stars, and it's just, if you know anything about Lisa Jewell or have read her before, she just does thrillers. She's known for her thrillers. Also, I've got my windows open, so if you can hear cars zooming or people outside, I've got my windows open. This was very suspenseful. It kind of chronicles a few different families and how they connect, and it's just a classic thriller, but I really liked it. Hence the 5 stars. Next, I read The Right Thing to Do, which is a Draco Hermione or Hermione, if you are familiar with the Harry Potter fanfic world, a Draco and Hermione romantic fanfiction. If you are not new to my channel, you'll know that I am not a romance reader, nor am I a fanfiction reader. This is the first time in my life I've read fanfic, like literally ever, and this was a full-sized novel fanfiction. I honestly thought I was going to read like a chapter or 2. I just was curious. To be honest, what it was is I watched the Harry Potter anniversary special that came out on HBO, and I cried. It was very emotional, but it left me really wanting to read Harry Potter. And the Harry Potter books that I read and reread was a child, and then as a teenager are at my parents' house where I used to live, like where I grew up, and my brother's reading them. So, you know, they're not mine, they're like the family collection. So I actually don't have my own set of Harry Potter books. I will eventually, like before I have kids, but I decided to request them from the library after watching the HBO special, but I couldn't wait and I needed some form of Harry Potter something. So I read The Right Thing to Do by Loves Bitka 8. If I remember, I'll actually put a link to the fan fiction down below. This creator has written so many Harry Potter fan fictions. A lot of them are Draco Hermione. This definitely was adult. It was definitely explicit, a little spice. But what I loved is that it took place like post Hogwarts when they were all adults, so it wasn't like weird teenager-y romance, and there was actual plot. Like, I think I got over halfway through it before there was like a spicy love scene, and it just like chronicles, it like is about Hermione. She's the main character in the fanfiction, and it's like her and Ginny are roommates. Ginny and Harry are still dating, and she's like fresh out of a breakup with Ron, who like is playing professional Quidditch. But yeah, she's like, it's like about her working for the ministry and Draco like being on trial and stuff. And it's just, it honestly was so good. I devoured it. I loved it. It was like over 300 pages. Like I said, it was a full novel, and I am taking Harry Potter fanfiction recommendations down below. Bonus points if they're about Draco and Hermione. I don't know, because I have issues. Anyways, let's move on. Okay. And I rated it 3 stars. Because at the end of the day, it still was like a smutty fanfiction, and it was like a little silly at parts because of the nature of the genre, I guess. But I did enjoy it, so 3 stars. Next, I read The Accident Season by Moira Fowley Doyle. Again, this was like 2 months ago that I read this at this point, so I'm trying to like remember. But basically, this was like a young adult thriller horror. Again, if you've been here a long time, you know that I don't generally like young adult, so like, why do I keep trying? It's just not for me, to be honest. Like, I don't know, I just don't like it. And the characters were poorly developed, and the plot felt like it had some holes, but it was suspenseful, and it was an interesting idea. That's all I got for you about it. It doesn't stand out in my mind. I barely remember it. It was a 2-star. Next, I read The Anatomy of Dreams. So, The Anatomy of Dreams by Chloe Benjamin. I read a Chloe Benjamin book in 2021 that I gave 5 stars, called The Immortalists. I think I talked about it in a couple of videos. If not, it's definitely in my ranking every book I read in 2021 video, which I'll also link if you're interested in a quick rundown of every book I read last year. But it was like in my top, I only had 7 5-star reads in all of 2021, and that was one of them. And so I was really anxious to read another Chloe Benjamin book, but unfortunately I just did not like this. It's basically about these like dream scientists, so they do experiments and like sleep studies and stuff into like lucid dreaming. And so there's some like scientific background, maybe some hints of like magical realism-ish, but like I did not really like the main character. I was over the book. It was a little overexposed this was like her first book, and Immortalist came next. I actually want to see what else she's written because I love the Immortalist so much, so much. So I really wanted to like this one, and it was another 2-star, which was so disappointing. But yeah, I feel like some people might like this. I think maybe I had too high of expectations because of the Immortalists, so that could be on me. But next is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This was my book club pick for January. I have got a book club with one of my close friends that we just started in January, and this was my pick. The Nightingale. It's like covered in cat hair. Yum. Okay, so The Nightingale, it's a historical fiction that takes place in France during World War II, and it follows two sisters. One that is teacher and has a child, and her husband is in the war, and the other is a younger sister that basically wants to be part of the resistance. This isn't really spoiling it, just that she becomes involved in the resistance, and I guess it was based on a true story, or a series of true stories of the women during the war that helped basically smuggle fallen soldiers across the borders and keep them hidden and safe. So again, I don't really read a lot of historical fiction, but this has been on my list. It's so highly rated. It's like one of the most highly rated on Goodreads, like on my TBR, which is what made me want to pick it. Literally the cat hair that just flew out of this book, y'all. I am disgusting. It's going to be made into a movie this year. I want to say not until like November or something, like later in the year. And I think it's Elle and Dakota Fanning. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the movie. But I think even if you're not into historical fiction, like I said, I'm not really a historical fiction gal, I think you would really like this. It's so beautifully written. It is very dark. Like I said, it takes place during the war. There's definitely some triggering content in this book. I will say what I loved about it was that it's extremely morally gray. So like there's a lot of tough decisions in this book, as you can imagine, during World War II, and the way I've kind of summarized it for you. And what I really liked is that like you can really like sympathize with the characters and really feel for their situation. And like at one point I was literally feeling sympathetic for one of the Nazi soldiers. Like it's absolutely insane. I really liked it. I rated it 4 stars, just because I had a lot of issues with the ending. If you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this to anybody that loves character driven, but also anybody that's into historical fiction, specifically World War II. Okay. Next, I read. Oh, this was so highly anticipated for me. Hold on. Okay. I read The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. Now, I read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix in 2021, and I really enjoyed it. It was just very interesting and funny and action-packed, and it was just good. I am a big horror movie buff, and if you know me in real life know this about me. Super into the Final Girl support, or the Final Girl trope. So when I found out about this book, and the fact that it was written by Grady Hendrix, I was like, okay, I will love this. And he had the opportunity to really make it so great, and it was just not good. And I've heard a lot of similar reviews, so I know I'm not alone in this, but it's basically about a like therapeutic support group comprised of like actual final girls. If you don't know what a final girl is, it's like the trope in horror movies how there's always like one last girl standing that like out survives the killer or the monster or whatever. And it just had so much potential. I ended up rating this 2 stars. It just wasn't good. Like, it didn't make sense. The characters, the main character I didn't like, and like, I think I take a little bit of issue with like men writing them from the perspective of female characters, because if it's not done right, it's just like, I don't know, it didn't feel very true to like what I don't know. I think the narration didn't feel true to the actual character that was described, if that makes any sense. So I wouldn't recommend this. I just was really disappointed, and again, I had really high expectations, so maybe it's not that bad and I'm just being a hater. I'm just sipping on my haterade, but Grady Hendrix, do better. I don't know, let me know what you guys thought of this one if you read it, because I know so many people have read it and I've heard a lot of mixed reviews. So moving on to some liquid gold when it comes to books, and that is I started the journey of reading the Harry Potter series. So like I mentioned earlier, I put the first 2 books on hold, and after watching the HBO anniversary special about Harry Potter, and so I reread the Sorcerer's Stone in January, and I've decided that I'm just not going to be reading them. I am, however, going to be ranking them. I started a spread in my reading journal where I'll be ranking the Harry Potter books, but I won't be reading them because in my eyes they are all 5s, and that would deeply skew all of my reading and like statistical data. But anyways, I feel like everybody in the world at this point has read Harry Potter, and it just makes me feel cozy and nostalgic and at home. It just like reminds me of like all of the good parts of my childhood, and I just literally love Harry Potter so much. Like, it is simply indescribable. But I've been reading every book, and then we watch the movie. So I read the book, I finish it, watch the movie that night, and that's how I've been going. But my first one was in January, and just the Sorcerer's Stone is like so special. Like, just the world building, and just like, J.K. Rowling is amazing. Like, I just like don't even understand how she created all of this, thought it up in her head, and then wrote it so eloquently. And like, Harry Potter has changed the world forever. Like, people will always know Harry Potter. Like, I could go on forever and ever, but like, I'm just gonna reel it in. Moving on to the last book I read in January, which was Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. You guys, I hated it. I've heard so much about Ottessa Moshfegh. I've heard all about My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which is on my DBR. I'm sure you've heard of it as well if you're active on BookTok or BookTube, which I assume you are if you're watching this video. But Eileen was tragic. And I don't mean sad, I mean like it was tragic. It's supposed to be like a thriller, but it's the least thrilling thriller ever of life. I was so bored. Like, the main character, Eileen, is so... I just hated her. Like, her thoughts are like disgusting. disgusting. Like, there was just like this part about her feeling jealous of women that have been sexually assaulted because at least they're getting some sort of attention. I was like, wow, what a hot take. Like, please. Like, I almost DNF'd this, but like, the twist or like the main plot point, literally, we didn't even know was happening until like the last quarter of the book. Like, it was so slow and drawn out and boring, and I still want to read My Year of Rest and Relaxation, but like, everybody that liked Eileen, can you tell me why? Because I've heard people say good things about it, and I just hated it. There was not one single thing about Eileen that I liked. Not one single freaking thing. So anyways, that was January. Had a lot of duds. Had a lot of duds in January. But let's move on to February. Here's my visual representation of January. But let's move on. Okay. So in February, I read 9 books with a total of 3,890 pages. My average rating was a 3.14, so a way better reading month than January. Genres were, I read 5 thriller/horrors, 1 general fiction, 1 magical realism, and 2 fantasy. So, the first book I read in February was The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. This was my first Murakami, and I ended up giving it 2 stars. I felt like the book was about 150 pages longer than it needed to be. It was really slow moving, but it had a lot of magical realism elements that I found super interesting, and I wish there would have been more focus on the like magical elements of the story. I just found everything to be so choppy, I guess, like, and maybe that's just Murakami's style. Like I said, this is the first I've read by him, and I do want to read more, so I'm not 100% put off by this. I found it a lot more interesting in the beginning, and then that sort of died down for me. I liked the bits of magic. However, I like when books are a bit more magical. I like there to be some explanation. Now, I don't want some over-explaining, like, I don't need to know how everything works, but I want there to be some explanation. In this book, it just left so much to be desired, while at the same time being entirely too long. So, again, it was 2 stars. It was a lot, and I just don't think that this was for me. Next, I read Ring Shout. Ring Shout by P. Danielle Clark. Okay, so this book was really interesting. I'd never heard of it, and I actually picked it up at my local bookstore. It's a novella. I just kept seeing it there, and it looked super interesting. And then for Black History Month, they had it on like a special display. And I was like, okay, I've been wanting to read this, so let's pick it up. And basically, this takes place in the deep South, during like time of the Ku Klux Klan, and this follows a young black woman protagonist and her friends, and basically this is definitely a horror, but it's like some of the Ku Kluxes are inhabited by demons, so some of them are human but some of them are not, and it just is this tale of this like deep-seated racism and just these horrible things, but also a tale of ancestry and sort of ancestral power and beauty. And I was getting a phone call notification. It was really interesting. It was not like nothing I've ever read. I'd like to read more by Clark. I gave this 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I wanted it to be longer. I wish it could have, it was a novella. I don't really read novellas, so maybe I just wanted more. I don't know, it was very action-packed, but I would have loved a little more build-up, a little more character development, but again, there isn't a lot of time allotted when a book is, 120 pages or whatever, so I really like the idea behind this. There's a lot of great description, and it was a very emotional story, and I really liked it. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. I love this cover, it's beautiful. Okay. Next. I read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Love. I will say that I think that the Chamber of Secrets is probably the most, I don't want to say boring because Harry Potter's not boring, but like it's the least exciting of all of the storylines of all of the books, movies, etc. Like the book and the movie. And I think it just has like the least amount going on. But I do of course like it. So that's like my only complaint with Chamber of Secrets. But I don't really have a whole lot to say about it because I just feel like if you've read it, you've read it, and if you haven't, you're not going to. So again, I'm not really rating them, so. Okay, and then I read The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. The Good Sister. I loved The Good Sister. I read it in a day. I gave it 5 stars. This was my first Sally Hepworth, and I immediately went out and bought another Sally Hepworth. This book was sort of, it definitely ended up being like a thriller, but you couldn't really tell that it was a thriller at first. It's just almost, I knew it was a thriller going in because I know that Sally Hepworth is known for writing thrillers similar to Lisa Jewell, but it basically follows 2 sisters, but it's dual points of view, so it's just back and forth, and it's dual timeline between their childhood and the present. They're adults, I think early 30s maybe. And in the very beginning that something really bad happened when they were kids, like somebody died, and so like it's the whole book leading up to finding out what happened, who died, why, how they died, all that. So I love books like that where you like know not the ending, but like the major plot point. It's revealed in the beginning, and then the whole book is leading up to an explanation, if that makes sense. I love books like that, especially thrillers. But what I loved about this book is that the main character, one of the sisters, is neurodivergent. I am also neurodivergent, and to be able to see that representation in a book was amazing. I've never seen neurodivergence portrayed in a book that was not about neurodivergence, if that makes sense. Like, just the way that, certain things were described, like sensory issues, thought processes, masking, and I just loved it. So anybody that is watching that is neurodivergent or on the autism spectrum, or if you know somebody that is and you want to understand them a little bit more, read The Good Sister. It was a great thriller on its own, but the neurodivergence representation I just loved it so much. It like really resonated with me. Yeah, that's it. I loved it. I loved this book. 5 stars. And then next, not all that exciting, I guess, because I read The Prisoner of Azkaban. Again, read this one in a day. It's so good. The first 3 Harry Potter books are so short and like not intimidating. I remember feeling like they were huge when I first read them. I read the first book when I was 5, so I guess that would have been huge. But anyways, I loved it. And the movie is really interesting because it's by a different director, so I enjoyed getting to experience the book and the movie again. The next book I read in February was Sisters by Daisy Johnson. This is another thriller about 2 sisters, just like The Good Sister. This was really interesting. Again, it's kind of like dual perspective, but it's written more like prose, so it's very like choppy, and there will be chapters that are just written almost like it's just like a very poetic, very kind of all over the place, but it works in Daisy Johnson style. It's very like a fragmented, and on the cover everything is like in fragments and jagged pieces, and that's how this book felt. It's different to anything I've ever read. The style, I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this 3 stars. Ultimately, it was a little bit confusing, a little bit choppy, a little bit all over the place, which was both one of my favorite things about the book and one of my least favorite. I enjoyed reading in a new style, but it was kind of a lot and just a little all over the place. But I would recommend it to anybody that loves thrillers, suspense, mystery, etc. It was quite good. Next, I do have this one beside me. I have read The Prettiest Star by Carter Sickles. Look how beautiful this cover is. This was an impulse buy at my local bookstore. I had just bought this because the cover was beautiful. I didn't read the back. I knew nothing about it. I had no idea what it was about, but the cover was beautiful, and I had to have it in my collection. And I'm so glad I bought this book. The Prettiest Star chronicles it takes place in a small town in Ohio where I'm from. Well, it's not the town I'm from, I just mean I'm from a small town in Ohio. It takes place in a small town in Ohio in the 80s, and it's told from multiple perspectives. But essentially, the eldest son in the family is gay and moves to New York during the AIDS epidemic, and basically he is then infected with AIDS and he comes home to the town. And that's not a spoiler, it happens in the beginning, but basically the story, because it's told partially from the perspective of Brian, who is a documentary, he's like a filmmaker, so it's him filming himself and talking. His younger sister, who is in late middle school, early high school, I think, when he comes home, and then his mom. He's got a dad as well, but it's not really told from the dad's perspective, and it basically just talks about like this deep ingrained homophobia in small towns about, the AIDS epidemic. And really what I loved is the rawness and richness of the story of a family truly being torn apart by this deep-seated homophobia. It's just heartbreaking. You really sympathize with the characters because they just don't understand. It's just so sad. You feel so sad for Brian and for his sister and for the ignorance of the people in this town, and this this was so emotional. Again, I love that it was from a small town in Ohio, so it just felt so relatable to me, but also to really see this side, because I've read other books that take place during the AIDS epidemic, but I've never seen it from a perspective of a small town and through the eyes of a family, in the way that, you know, Brian's illness, in all of these deaths and everything, plays this huge role, just on the family and on him, and it was so moving and so beautiful. I gave this 4 stars. I would love to read more by Carter Sickles, but I'm so glad that I picked this up on a whim. Okay, we've got two more. Next, I read My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. So this is another thriller, surprise. And it's just about this man and his wife. They like stalk and kill women. They're like serial killers. That's not a spoiler. And like, I gave this 3 stars. I liked it and it kept my attention, but like, I didn't get why. Like, I did not understand their motives for like killing all these women. Like, because they seemed really mentally sound, but like, they never really gave a reason as to why they were killing these women. It was so weird. It was a cool story, but like, it didn't feel plausible to me. Like, the whole time I was like, why? Like, I didn't understand any of the decisions they made. And I liked the characters a lot. The wife was really interesting, and the husband it's told from the husband's perspective. And the characters were just really interesting, but I didn't find it believable. I also they had teenage children, and the way that the teenagers talked and reacted were like not how typical teenagers speak and react, so it felt really disjointed for me in that way. However, it was really interesting. There were lots of twists and turns, and it kept my attention, which is why I gave it the 3 stars. But ultimately, I wouldn't really recommend it, and I don't think I'll read anything else by Samantha Downing. Okay, and the last book that I finished in February is called The Night Before by Wendy Walker. I actually listened to this as an audiobook with my boyfriend. We actually started it on Christmas Eve and then just finished it this month, because we hadn't been on like a road trip since then, and that's the only time where we both are listening to an audiobook together, is when we are spending a long period of time in the car. This was, you guessed it, a thriller, and it basically there ended up being like, I really liked it, and then toward the like middle to end, there ended up being this twist that was so far-fetched and literally made no freaking sense. Like, it was so extra, and like, it just like ruined a good book. Like, it was well written, and like the audiobook was enjoyable. It's written between 2 perspectives. A woman goes missing, and her sister takes it upon herself to basically investigate and to find out what happened to her sister. And I just like, it was well written, but like the twist was really stupid, and it felt cheap, and it like ruined the whole book for me. I only gave this 2 stars, and my boyfriend kind of felt the same way. It just like, sorry, somebody's revving outside. Like, we get it, you have a fat engine. But yeah, I just like, I wanted to like it. I started out really liking it, and then it just took a nosedive. I wouldn't recommend it, nor will I be reading anything else by Wendy Walker. But yeah, so I read 17 books between January and February. But I hope that you enjoyed this very long video. Let me know what your favorite read so far of the year is, or let me know if you've read any of the books looks I talked about today and what your thoughts are and anything else you want to see from me in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're staying happy, healthy, and safe. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Bye.